Welcome back to Let's Talk Tax, the show for growth-minded CPAs and real estate pros navigating the world of tax with clarity and confidence. I'm TJ Sponsel. Today, we're excited to welcome our first-time guest to the show, Jeremy Clopton from Upstream Academy, to talk about leadership development at CPA firms. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me, TJ. Looking forward to the conversation.
I know when we first talked a few weeks ago, I really thought, number one, what you all do at Upstream Academy is extremely valued in the CPA industry, and I've heard so many good things about you. So I really do look forward to today's episode. So let's go ahead and jump right in, if we will.
Absolutely. So at Upstream Academy, our goal and our mission is to guide accounting firms to high performance, which means that we're focusing on helping them run the business of the CPA firm better. So we do that through strategic planning, leadership retreats, but primarily through leadership development, really helping develop the next generation of partners, helping those that are in leadership elevate their game, and also help those that are learning what it takes to be a leader, how they get on that path to high-performing leadership.
Sure. Well, let's go ahead and dive right into some of the questions I have for you today, Jeremy. Given the relationship you have and your company have with leadership throughout the CPA industry, why is leadership development such a crucial issue for so many CPA firms right now?
Really, when we look at the landscape of the profession right now, there's obviously been a lot of changes in the last few years. Private equity is the big talking point for everyone, I feel like. And I would say that the influence of private equity is one of the reasons that leadership development is becoming as prominent as it is. I think we've always had a strong need for leaders in the profession, but what we're seeing is firms are now really taking a hard look at, and firms at all sizes, I should say, on how do they run the firm better like a business. And that requires more than just being a good accountant. It means that you've also got to be a great leader and a great business leader at that. So that's the primary reason that I see firms wanting to spend more time on leadership development now, perhaps than they have in the past, is how do we really focus on this entity less like a group of accountants that all work together, but instead, how do we run the business and how do we lead a business forward?
Sure. Well, I think the other challenge too, at least from what I see in our firm and through the 500 plus firms we work with, is that the 20 something and 30 something year olds today are a lot different than when I'm almost near 50 years old now. The culture and the mindset is a lot different. They're more inquisitive. They want to know what their path is. They want a very clear outline of what that looked like, as well as milestone or metrics that have to hit for themselves and the firm to help them get to where they want to be.
I agree. And the generation that's coming up in leadership is much more entrepreneurial in nature than, say, generations that came into leadership 20, 30, 40 years ago. It is a different landscape, and that inquisitive nature is such a great benefit to those leaders because now they have the desire to figure out what's the best way forward rather than, okay, well, let's just keep doing it the way that we've done it. And not that the way that some firms have done it has been bad necessarily. It's not, the status quo isn't inherently bad, but someone that's more entrepreneurial and inquisitive saying, all right, so that's the why we've done it. And the way that we've done it, is there a better way? And that's a really exciting new approach for a lot of firms, is they're being able to say, how do we honor the legacy of the past and build an even greater legacy going forward?
Oh, I completely agree. I have, a couple of years ago, I started listening tours throughout all five of our offices, and it was inspirational for me because I hear these from these colleagues that have 5, 7, 8 years of experience in terms of the mark they want to make on McGuire Sponsel. Instead of this top-down leadership where all the ideas and all the implementation has to come from the senior leadership. No, a lot of it, it's these 3, 4, 5, 8 year people stepping and going, hey, I have this idea. And we're like, hey, we'll run with it. But I look forward to it. I mean, what we're doing with AI right now as a firm, we have this group and it's made up of, the bulk of the group is under 30 years old because they're much more passionate about it than somebody like me. And it's really been inspiring to empower this next generation or even the 2 generations down in our firm to see where they want to take the firm and how they want to put their thumbprints on it.
Yeah, and if you look at a lot of managing partners in the profession, and we work with a lot of firms that are in that, call it 10 to $40 million range is a pretty broad, but our sweet spot. There are a lot more managing partners that are also in their early to mid 40s at this point. It's not, so I mean, that's a younger generation as well than perhaps we've traditionally seen. Is you've got a lot of even senior leaders that are in firms saying, hey, we need to encourage that next generation of, a younger leader to step in with those fresh ideas, approaching it from a new perspective. It doesn't mean that they're just going away, the senior leaders. What's great is it gives the senior leaders an opportunity to really be a mentor and help develop the leadership skills of that next generation as they're in the leadership seat. And what a great opportunity that is for a young leader to step into perhaps the highest level of leadership in a public accounting firm and have with them, going alongside them, the immediate past managing partner there to mentor them and help them as they navigate what it looks like to lead a firm. It really is a great opportunity for multiple generations to really play to their strengths and elevate everyone within the firm.
Absolutely. So how can firms better integrate leadership development into their day-to-day culture?
They've really got to step back and commit to making it intentional. And yes, we have programs, we have 1 year programs, 2 year programs, webinars. One of the things that I tell firms all the time, even firms that work with us, is leadership development is not all about the books that you read, the classes that you take, the webinars that you sit in, the podcasts that you listen to. Don't get me wrong, I love a good podcast, and I would encourage people to listen to more podcasts, get more information. But the way that you incorporate leadership development into the day to day is you bring somebody along with you into a leadership activity and you let them observe. And then you debrief afterward. And then the next time around, you actually allow them to take part in that activity. And then you debrief after. And then eventually they take over the leadership activity. I find that a lot of firms, a lot of professionals would get really fixated on, well, I've got to learn more, I've got to learn more, I've got to learn more. And I do absolutely encourage a mindset of continuous learning. But you've got to take action to truly develop leadership. Leadership development doesn't come simply by getting more information. Leadership development comes from taking action. So I would say for a leader that has someone that they need to get into that next level, invite that person to the next leadership activity, whether it's a meeting, a presentation, whatever it may be, and give them the opportunity to see leadership in action and then start having them take the action to take over that activity for you.
Completely agree. Is that, we have a program here called the Leadership Academy. And every year we have a handful of people that sit in it. It's an outside facilitator, mentors this class for about an 8 or 9 month period. And then they always present at our annual staff retreat. And so one of the things that we've run into, though, and I think where we've gotten it wrong, is that we put them in this Leadership Academy. Okay, they spend quite a bit of time in it. They come out of the Leadership Academy and they're ready to contribute. Well, we have people that are in leadership of those respective practice lines that don't want to support the way these people, the way we've empowered them. We've educated them, we've now empowered them, but we've got to support their ideas. And it's kind of been it's been a great learning season for us because they came out and they want to implement some of these ideas. They feel empowered. They got all these wind at their sails, and then you got people that are kind of been there before going, wait a minute here, hold up, and there's this rub, there's this friction, and it's like, and so we actually have a motto here. It's called educate, empower, and reward. Well, we've done that for years. That's always been our motto, kind of a core of our culture. And actually, a couple of years ago, learning from ourselves and the mistakes we've made in having these leadership academies and then not really enabling them to kind of blossom, if you will, or implement these ideas and put their thumbprints on our firm, we had to actually add the word support to remind managers that we've got to support the empowerment of how we people. So now we say educate, empower, support, and reward. Because you've got to be able to support those new leaders and let them take some risks. Let them take those training wheels off, and they might fall, but you got to help them pick them back up because they are the future of the firm.
The risk there is if you miss the support side, you run the risk of attrition of some of your best people. And I know there's a lot of
Okay.
fear with folks that say, well, if we invest in them and then they leave, the risk there is it's when you invest in them and then you miss the support side. It's telling them, hey, you're going to be a leader. We're going to do all this for you. And then they come out and they almost feel disenfranchised. And it's like, great, you sent me to all these courses. You told me all the great things that I can do. And then when I go to do it, you say, oh, wait, not yet. You're not quite there yet. Need more experience, need a few more years. You need to be a little bit older and then you can do it. Then you lose your best people. So I love the fact that you all added support to that, because it is the absolute one of the absolute keys to then retaining those great people that you've invested in. Is now they know not only do they want me to learn it, they want me to apply it. And what a great opportunity that is.
Well, and what we've also learned is that we've got to be, as leaders, we've got to be committed to explain the why. Is
Mm-hmm.
that we just can't sit there and they have all these theories. You go and whether it's a book or a podcast or a class they take,
Yeah.
and they hear these theories. Well, when they go to apply it, we got to be committed to explaining them the why. A year or so ago, we had our Leadership Academy came out, and there's some really great people in that group, and it was our fifth year of doing it. They had these, but they had some questions. They didn't understand the business of the firm. They understood concepts of leadership and the power of having difficult conversations and all these different theories. Well, the problem was they came up with these ideas and they ran into some roadblocks. And I had to sit down and actually, so I literally did a crash course at Town Hall called Looking Under the Hood. And I
Yeah.
explained to them the business of McGuire Sponsel, just some of the costs of what the firm, our wage costs, our rent costs, our travel costs. And once they saw that, it was like, it brought a whole new understanding of how we go about making some of the decisions to reinvest or when to hire new people or how we want to allocate towards marketing expense. And it's really been a really fun exercise to see some of these people grow because we as leaders had to be committed to explain the why. We just can't say no. We've got to kind of explain to them maybe why we're not saying no. We're just saying not now, but maybe for an
Yeah.
investment or something like that.
Yeah. And so I'm going to encourage your listeners, if I can, real quick, TJ. There's a mindset shift that has to take place for that to happen. And it's not just the why, but what I see, and look, I've been guilty of this myself. I think that we all have, is when we assume that somebody should know a whole lot more than they do. And then we give them responsibility and they underperform. We then start to believe they're capable of less. And it's not because they necessarily didn't perform well, it's that we just made this big assumption of everything that they knew. What I encourage leaders is shift the mindset there. And if you start to assume that they know less, and I don't mean that they're ignorant, please don't take it that way, but instead that we have a responsibility to teach them the things that we assume they should just know. What we'll find is that people are capable of a lot more, because I would imagine with your people there, when they came out of that academy, when you taught them the why and how the business works, now all of a sudden their ideas got exponentially better because now you taught them the thing that they should have known, which, by the way, the business of our profession isn't taught in any class in college. I've yet to hear anybody go through a course that's how do accounting firms make money. It's how to be an accountant, not how do accounting firms make money. It's one of those things that I think it
Exactly.
really probably applies in all industries. When we take the time to explain the things that we just feel like they should know, and instead as leaders we accept it's our responsibility to teach them so they know, what we find is people are capable of so much more.
Yes. So along with that, when they approach succession planning, what are some of the common mistakes they have in developing leaders or not developing leaders?
Biggest one that I see is they wait too long. We think that, hey, we've got succession planning. I'm going to retire in 2 years. Now it's the time to start developing my successor. If you're waiting until 2 years out to develop your successor, you're about 3 years too late, because now you've got to get them the skills, let alone do all the transition that takes place. In an ideal world, I like to see a succession plan. You're really focusing on a few different things. You're focusing on the work, who's going to be able to technically do the work, who's going to be able to manage the relationships. That may be a slightly different skill set. And then who's actually going to step into the leadership roles. And what I find that a lot of firms do is they simply look at succession through the lens of client service. Well, I've just got to make sure that I've got somebody to do the work. But if the person that's retiring is the head of the A&A department or the head of the tax department, maybe they're the managing partner, we're not worried about the client work. We're worried about who's going to lead that key segment of our business. So it's not
Sure.
taking enough time. It's looking at it through the lens of just the client service side of it. And the other one that I've seen a lot of firms fall into the trap of lately is, well, they should just be able to figure out how to do it. I have this belief, and I have yet to have anybody prove me wrong. So if a listener does, by all means, reach out. I'd love to be proven wrong on this. As a general rule, the further we get in our career, the better we think we were early in our career. So said another way, the further I get from 23, the higher performing I was at 23. I tend to forget all the things that I struggled with, the things that I didn't know, because we just can't remember in a lot of situations what it was like to not to know. So a lot of leaders just assume, well, somebody will come behind me and they'll just figure it out because I figured it all out on my own as well. When in reality, we forget that somebody took the time to develop us. And I don't know that that is with ill intent. I genuinely believe that right now in 2025, the reason that's happening so often is we're just so daggum busy. We are so busy that we're not taking the time to say, somebody taught me, somebody poured into me, somebody invested in me to get me to where I am. They took the time to do that. I don't know that they necessarily worked more hours to do that. Some may have. But they have the mindset of their responsibility is to develop. And I think right now we've just got so many that are so busy and they're trying to keep up with the client work that they don't feel like they have the time to do that. And that's another, I would call it an error, is prioritizing client work over succession planning. And I realize somebody's going to say, oh, but we've got to pay the bills. I agree with that. But revenue today or taking care of clients today is often short-term thinking. Developing your leaders for the future, that's the whole sustainability and longevity of the firm. If you don't develop your
Sure.
successor, there's nobody to take on the clients. So it's making that time is the other key thing.
One thing I'd add to that, Jeremy, is I think one thing that we discuss here at McGuire Sponsel is that you also got to be complementary, meaning your
Mm-hmm.
leadership can't just talk. We're a very technical based business, okay?
Yeah.
But those sometimes if you just have only the technical people leading, you're going to slant away from maybe relationship building, business development, growth. Adding new areas and new practice lines. I think that's what actually just today we were having a meeting. Our executive committee met. We're talking about leadership development of all things, coincidentally. And the thing is that we're trying to create this matrix and say, okay, let's have a score sheet of like 20 different attributes. And we're not asking
Yeah.
everybody to be the same. We're not asking everybody to be perfect, but it's like, hey, how do you score on these different attributes that contribute to strong leadership? So we can be complementary. I mean, if any of our listeners met Dave McGuire and I are the odd couple because we complement each other. And I think that's one of
Yeah.
the things that we want to make sure that we do as a firm, looking out to 2030 and 2040, to say, hey, listen, are we going to maintain this complementary approach to leadership in our firm, and how we're moving this forward, and how we're hiring and inspiring and investing for the future.
Yeah. That complementary aspect of it is so important. And that also comes with that shift to thinking about it like a business, because no longer is it, well, do we just have people that can do the work? You've got to have somebody, yeah,
Sure.
they can do the work. You need to have somebody, to your point, that can take care of people. You've got to have somebody who's thinking about the client experience and what does it look like to be a client of the firm. You've got to have somebody thinking about those growth strategies, not just the current growth, but getting somebody to come up with a brand new service line. That's not your traditional mindset for a lot of us. They got into accounting. It isn't because we're known for being overly creative. And I don't want to downplay. There are a lot of very creative people in our profession, so please don't take it that way. But you don't typically go to college say, I'm really into the creative side of things. Like, finance and accounting, that's where you should go. It's like, that's probably not the
I mean,
recommendation.
Jeremy, I mean, our international practice, we have a very successful
Yeah.
international practice. The reason it started was years ago, a very large firm, a top 60 firm in the country, called me one night, the managing partner, and said, my partners don't want to invest in international practice. Would you build
Mm-hmm.
one that's as successful as your other practice lines? And
Yeah.
obviously we did that. I mean, we were very willing to be entrepreneurial and take some risks. Looking ahead,
Mm-hmm.
what leadership skills do you believe will define the most successful CPA firms over the next decade?
Over the next decade, um, One of the very first things that I'm going to say is the ability to rapidly develop people and not rely on time to get people where they need to be.
Hmm.
I genuinely
Sure.
believe that as our profession evolves, it is going to require people as the differentiator. And the reason that I say that, I am very pro technology. My background before I joined Upstream is in analytics and forensics and digital forensics. I love technology. I've loved technology for a long time. If we are truly going to evolve our profession and we are going to remain competitive and not become commoditized, because I do see that as a risk. Too much technology, we automate everything. What additional value do we bring? So that's why I say you've got to elevate people. And that's going to be an absolute key skill of leaders in the future, is the ability to get other people leveled up as quickly as possible. I do think that leaders that can be very inquisitive, they can ask great questions, they can be great listeners to understand what the market needs, what the market's not getting. And then, like we were just talking about, being able to say, all right, let's go create that because nobody else is doing it. Our clients need it. We can do it. And really looking to be inquisitive and entrepreneurial in that regard. I would say that being adaptable is going to be one. And I would put in with that the ability to make decisions without all the information, because that's something that,
Yeah.
as the speed of change occurs and just speeds up in the profession, I would say probably every industry that's experiencing or is experiencing that. But as the speed of change increases, the ability to decide something before you have certainty is going to become increasingly important. And typically we like to be fairly certain. We're a bit risk averse, and that's not a bad thing. That's by design. That's one of the reasons that we're quite successful as a profession. But the ability to take on a little bit more risk in the decision making and say, hey, we don't have all the information. Your crystal ball is not perfectly clear, but we're gonna make this decision is going to be key. The last thing that I will say, and I talked about this at one of our conferences this summer, the ability to quit even when something is working. So being able to identify those things that maybe they're working, but they're not the thing that you need to be focused on for the future. So figuring out the status quo types of concepts that have worked to get you to where you are, but they won't be the things to get you to where you want to be, and have the courage to kill those things off and to quit those practices so that you can take on new. And that's a tough skill, because it really requires you to be willing to stop doing something that is successful because you know something else has the potential to be even more successful. And that's a skill that takes a lot of time to develop and a lot of repetition. Not time on the clock, but a lot of repetition to get confident with that and understand how to do it.
Sure. Yeah, we often hear, I mean, we often are trying to answer two questions. What does a leader need of the firm, and what does the firm need out of a leader? Because you've got to be
Great
adaptable,
questions.
and as your firm grows, you've got to be willing to modify. And yes, there's something that you may really enjoy do. I really enjoy doing certain things, but it's not to
Mm-hmm.
the firm's benefit that I do those anymore. It's a great opportunity for a younger person to step into that role and take it to a level maybe I couldn't get it to, or give them some really good training and real world
Yeah.
experience to get them to the point where they can be a complete leader. I think because our motto here, we earlier this year we launched the McGuire Sponsel 2030 vision, a very very aggressive growth strategy over the next 6 years. And I told the staff when we rolled it out, time is not our friend. And as a leader,
Mm.
time is not your friend. We don't have the luxury of waiting because everything's constantly changing at a rapid pace. You mentioned private equity. There's a lot of things active in our industry right now that are looking for market share, and we've got to be on our toes at all times, looking out for those opportunities and making sure we're adapting and evolving our firm as quickly as possible. Obviously, in a disciplined way, but it
Of
creates
course.
an unbelievable opportunity for young people to step into those roles because we can't cover all the ground.
Yeah.
That's kind of what causes I lose sleep on this. Is that okay? Am I developing leaders fast enough to be able to be what the market wants McGuire Sponsel to be in the coming years? And the answer is sometimes I don't know. Now, a
Yeah.
lot of times I feel good about it. I'm inspired, but that's a real big challenge because we've chosen we don't want to take private equity. We want to be an
Right.
independent firm that is continues to bet on itself and continue to develop people and grow for the future. And so that's a different model that we've chosen, and we understand there's a lot of risk with that, and there's a lot of discipline required to help us achieve what we want to achieve.
Absolutely. And I want to build on one thing that you said there, TJ, which is for leaders, a really good question that you can ask yourself to get in that mindset that you just shared is at the end of every day, what did I do today that somebody else is capable of doing? And then make a commitment that you're going to offload that going forward, because leaders, partners, whoever you want to think of at the highest levels in every organization, their number one priority should be the thing that only they are capable of doing. Because if they're the only one that can do it and it plays to their superpower, that's where they're going to contribute the most. And as a leader, it's now up to you to say, okay, what are all the other things that are distracting from your ability to do that? And there are people that should be able to do that. And you may think, well, they're not ready. I can guarantee you they won't be ready until you give it to them. And you give them the opportunity to learn. Goes back to something you said earlier. Maybe they fail a little bit. Maybe they make a mistake. They screw up a little bit. Great. We learn a whole lot more in the struggle than we do when things are going just as perfectly as possible.
I tell people we're if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. There's going to
Yep.
be some failure. I mean, along the way, you can't get it perfect. So, well, Jeremy, that's great closing advice, and I really do appreciate your time today, and I look forward to our organizations continuing the relationship and serving the CPA
Absolutely.
industry. So I really do appreciate it. That wraps up today's conversation on leadership development and how partners at CPA firms can be proactive about building future-ready leaders. A big thank you to Jeremy Clopton from Upstream Academy for joining us and sharing his perspective. As we heard today, leadership development isn't just about professional growth. It's about building stronger firms for our future. From engaging and retaining top talent to preparing the next generation of leaders, CPA firms have real opportunities to thrive by investing in their people. If you'd like to connect with Jeremy or learn more about the Upstream Academy, what the Upstream Academy is doing with firm leadership, visit upstreamacademy.com. Thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk Tax. We'll see you next time.